it's crazy, but it's
You're watching Channel Z, the world's leading zombie apocalypse channel. Broadcasting live from Studio Z.
Makes me act the way I do.
Welcome to Undead Live, reporting from the front lines of the zombie apocalypse. We have your back morning, noon, and night, whether you're dead, undead, recently deceased, or fully alive. I'm Athena Actipus.
And I'm Liz Grumbach.
And today we're going to be talking about a very special kind of zombie apocalypse, the academic publishing situation that we're all in. Now, Liz, I don't know about you, but I've had some reviews recently where I wasn't really sure whether the reviewers were, live, undead, or recently deceased.
Yeah, and I feel like that's usually like reviewer number 2. That I'm just not sure if they're a zombie or if they're infected, or I'm not. Yeah, it's the vibe. I get a vibe, a zombie vibe.
Yeah, so we have a really awesome guest today. We're going to be talking with Jeremy Sykes, who is in the academic publishing world, so he can give us the sort of inside scoop on the zombie apocalypse of academic publishing. Should we bring him on, Liz?
That sounds amazing.
Hi there.
Hey, Jeremy, welcome to the show.
Thank you. This is so great. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, so you're in the world of academic publishing. How did you get there?
Yeah, so I had the good fortune to marry an academic, for one thing. And so I've been an academic spouse for a long time. And even before that, I got to support her as she finished her PhD and then finished her postgraduate work as well. So I've sort of been in the trenches with her. And at the time, I was working in law. I was working in securities litigation on both sides, suing companies that were either committing acts of fraud that either padded their stock price or doing things that were otherwise dangerous or illegal. And so we did class action suits. Anyways, at the time I was doing that work with her and and it became clear that I was going to be in this space of academia with her. All of our friends were academics. All of our friends, were going to conferences, and she would take me to some of the conferences as well, which was always a lot of fun because, well, you know why. But I don't. That's not nefarious or anything. They're just smart people getting together, so it's awesome. But at that point, it sort of became clear that I should try to get into a space that was of a similar area.
So, Jeremy, you kind of went from dealing with one sort of set of zombies to another, it sounds like.
Yeah, for sure. The law is there are lots of zombie-esque areas about the law, which even just the sort of complaints and documents you file, it's all copied and pasted and then adjusted. Anyways, I don't want to get involved in that, but so then I worked for a small academic press here in Illinois for a little while, and then I was hired by the company I work for now, which is Wolfram Research, and I basically am the project manager for a subsidiary. It's not really. It's all part of the same thing. It's Wolfram Media.
So Jeremy, tell us a little bit about the landscape of academic publishing. So you're part of a small publishing company. What are the big players? What is it like kind of being in that field?
So there are almost, actually probably more now. The last count that I saw was about 30,000 academic journals out there publishing about 2 million articles a year. So that's a lot of journals, and they tend to be consolidated, and you guys all know the names already. Springer and Elsevier and World Scientific, and then there are the less, and Wiley and Taylor and Francis, and then there are the less well-known ones as well. The largest companies, that Springer and Elsevier, have more than 50% of the journals together, and that has some advantages in that they can, they can push all that onto their platform, and it helps for searchability, and it helps for streamlining what you've gotten.
Jeremy, we have a question from Pam. She's asking, what's the difference between academic publishing and regular publishing, or sort of non-academic publishing?
Pam, it's funny you ask, because today the news broke that HarperCollins is acquiring Harcourt Mifflin, making another gigantic publisher. They're already both gigantic publishers, right? But even bigger. And that's relevant to academic publishing too, because Elsevier is a public company trading under RELX, but Springer is not. That's a private company. But the sort of the U.S., the largest subsidiary of I think it's, I have it written down, but I think it's like the Holzbrunk company. It's based in Germany, which is unsurprising because it's Springer. But they own Macmillan. So, there is this crossover between regular publishing and academic publishing. But
and how about the economic model for academic publishing versus regular publishing?
And I was just about to ask, we've mentioned Elsevier, and what I hear about Elsevier, right, is that I have a lot of friends in libraries. Like, Elsevier is the devil, right? It is the person behind the zombie horde of these 30,000 journals. So maybe
well, they are publicly traded, and that might well be part of the problem. The incentives, I was looking at the CEO, Eric Angstrom. He makes something like 1.7 million per year, and he's got to report to his shareholders, and he's got to report profits every year, and there's a lot of pressure there. I saw that question, who's even reading all that? And so I do have some stats on that as well. You can expect a reader to spend less than 30 minutes on your paper. So after all that time you've spent on it, you're not getting a lot of time. And they're also not reading journals per se. They're finding your article on some distributor, some aggregator, and they're finding your paper that way. So what I do, which is to put stuff into actual journals that people can hold in their hands, or people can see the whole thing, it's less and less relevant. People find what they need to find for their research. But we wanted to know a little bit about the academic model. If you go to any one of their homepages, whether it's Elsevier or Springer or Wiley, you would be hard-pressed to immediately find the journals. There's a lot of other stuff that they are purporting to offer, that they, analytics and it's just so much that they do. And, you could see, particularly with Elsevier, because it's a public company, you can check on a lot of this stuff, which is nice. You can see how many employees they have. None of those employees are the editors of their journals, which should come as a surprise to no one. But there are thousands of people working in these companies, and they all have to get paid. So when it comes down to the actual economic model, you guys know this, but I'll just outline it very quickly. You pay to publish. You have your article. You're all done. You're ready. Yeah. It's been accepted, and you have to pay.
And so, that pay to publish model. So I'm coming from the humanities. And so the pay to publish model is something that just in recent years has started to become an issue, because our graduate students and people coming up in the profession aren't necessarily trained to deal with that. And I'm wondering, I know it's different in the sciences, Athena and Jeremy, but I would love to hear how it's different.
Yeah, I mean, I'm at this point kind of used to the fact that if I want people to be able to access my articles, I have to have $2,000 or $3,000 or $4,000 for each article in order to make them open access. Otherwise, you can share copies of your article, with people if they ask, and on places like ResearchGate and stuff like that, or on your website. But people have to know that that's how you get the the articles, right? So it makes it like accessibility of research for just somebody who's interested. So like, say you have somebody who is smart and hasn't had the chance to go to college and is really interested in the world and they want to learn a bunch of stuff. They're not going to know, oh, if I go to the website of the academic whose paper I'm interested in, but it's behind this paywall, I might be able to find that paper, or I could send them an email and they would send me the paper, right? So we're just like putting all of this information, it sucks because it's like, as an academic, you have to pay so that there won't be inequality in who can access your work.
Yeah, and I was going to say, how many articles are you expected to publish per year, Athena? So it's not just the, you get the 1 or 2 articles, that's $6,000 right there. Ideally, your university wants you to publish a lot more than that, right? So that is not just one grad student's salary. That is, that could be 5 or 6 grad student salaries. Think of all the work you could do if you were paying that money to help people that are helping your science and help their careers as well. Instead, it's all going to the boogeyman, and Elsevier does a lot and a lot of good too. So I don't want to lambaste them too much. They do. They were involved in a bill a couple of years ago that was rapidly dropped with Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney in New York, which was something that was going to heighten the barriers to open access. And there was a huge public outcry, and they dropped their support of that. But I can't even imagine for the humanities, your budgets for grants, to the extent that you even need to apply for them, they probably include travel to an archive, maybe some archive reproduction fees and permissions fees. But adding a line item for, and I did some math before the interview today, and I was just looking. Of the 2,800 publications that Elsevier has, the median, the mean, and the mode is all almost exactly $3,000 for all of their journals. So that's just to publish it. Now, and we can talk
Jeremy,
about this
why does it cost so much?
Well, because they can ask that price and you can pay.
Yeah. And I think it's very much like this question from Erica, like, how did we become so zombified by this paywall of knowledge? How did we start putting knowledge behind paywalls, right? And like everyone watching and everyone here today knows that I'm like viciously anti-capitalist, right? So like, is it what KS is commenting, right? The academic world has been fractured by our capitalistic society, right? I could talk about this forever, right? But I think that there's something here maybe about, we have become zombified by the structures and the hierarchy of academia, right? And the expectations that we put on people to succeed, when really succeeding is just producing new knowledge.
Yeah.
I think.
Well, so, and I was going to end with this, but it's such a perfect thing to say, is that, in some of the books that I've worked on recently, I get to read letters by academics to other academics from, 100, 200 years ago sometimes. And that is the value ultimately, and the value that's going on, with ZAM and a lot of other science podcasts. It's about you guys talking to each other. That's the most important thing. And, that's why the conference circuit, having been short-circuited by the pandemic, was something of a grievous blow. We all coped, and lots of conferences went online, and that had its benefits and its costs. But that interaction between scientists is really the gold standard for how this stuff gets spread. And it's really fascinating to read a letter by Albert Einstein to David Hilbert, two of the greatest mathematicians in history, just writing to each other longhand. Anyways, that's.
And is that the kind of thing that for me, hearing you say something like that, it's like, oh, well, that's open humanities. Like, that's the work of digital humanities, which I work in, which is making all of this available online, right?
Yes,
and
absolutely.
I know that that's open science too, I believe. Y'all have to tell me about open science, maybe.
Well, I mean, so there are so many different forms of open science and open access, and I almost every day I find out about a new organization that I need to join or that we need to to research first to see if, and that I guess is part of the zombification. If you want to get outside of the model of dealing with the big publishers, then the solution is open access. But because of the nature of open access, and because you can just publish your work for free, but no one's going to read it. So you've got lots of different advocacy organizations that are trying to push various groups of authors out. I mean, there are African and all sorts of developing nations open access committees as well. Who do you know who to push, and who has the time to push all of them? And that, I think, is one of the challenges in defeating the Goliaths here.
So, Jeremy, when it comes to like how the money is moving, I'm curious about like if my image of it is right. Is it like, we have a lot of these publishing companies, they are charging either us for open access fees, or they're charging libraries, which then universities end up paying for, and then a bunch of the labor is some of the labor is happening at the publishers, but then also some of the labor is happening in the academy with the sort of reviewing and editing. Is that roughly what's going on? Did I get that right?
Yeah, I mean that's so we do work. Our especially in my job, which is less relevant because I'm publishing books that use a very specific software in particular. But the work that we put into getting all of your articles published, it is real. There is something there. But you're absolutely right that the onus is on the academic. And how do you line up a whole bunch of incentives that you have? What is your incentive to do a review? One company that I worked for offered associate editorships. So you could maybe go back to your tenure committee and say, oh, I was an associate editor of blank journal. And that's that's not nothing, but that's not that much either. So how do you
Yeah, the whole incentivization around being a reviewer, it long seemed to me like something was seriously like missing. So a long time ago, like 15 years ago or something, I wrote a paper about how we should be using like principles from cooperation theory to better design sort of, the networks for reviewing, and to basically have like, there's stuff like this now, like Publons, where you sort of have like a reviewer capital score, right? And so it's like, if you do a good job on your reviews, then you get some points. But like my idea for this is that you basically have a system where if you do a review that the editor thinks is valuable, that the authors thinks is valuable, and you do it in a short amount of time, that then you get like a high score in like reviewer world. And then when you submit papers, you get paired with people who also have a high score. So it creates like an incentive system for everybody to do a good job on reviews, make them constructive and helpful, and also to do more of them rather than less, because you could like get a higher score by doing more. So that was my idea for like how we could potentially make things better. But I think that paper's been cited like 7 times. So clearly it hasn't caught on. But maybe that's because I didn't get it published open access. So, who knows?
Yeah, well, I mean, no, I mean, that is a fantastic idea for establishing a system that provides some incentive for good review to happen. I can't tell you, I get one of 2 kinds of review. I get, this is great, stamp, and then I get this, there's reviewer 2, as you said, who just decimates it, and finding the happy medium between those two. And a system that you sort of described would be a neat way to do it. And you would think with the 47 billion in market cap that Elsevier has, that some of that could have been done already. And to be sure, they do have a whole bunch of artificial intelligence that's doing some of that, but it's in no way helpful to you guys right now. It's not, you know.
I love this idea, though, that Erica O'Neill just said, gamify the publishing review model, right? And like this idea of cooperation that Athena has, and something that is more human based and actually reveals the labor, right? That privileges the labor, because I don't know about y'all or you, Athena, but I don't get any credit for reviewing anything, right?
Yeah.
That's extra for me.
Yeah, I mean, there's like a spot on my CV for like all the journals that I review for, but like, I mean, given the amount of time it takes to do a good review, and honestly, like, so when I think about this from like a perspective of like, you know, having done some writing for general audiences and like having good editors and like how important good editors / reviewers are for the quality of the end product, like the value of the work that good reviewers do, like if they're, you know, constructive and helpful and all of that, is extraordinarily valuable for the whole academic enterprise that we're in. And yet it is the, like, you know, least acknowledged piece of all of that. I mean, basically reviewers are like teachers for people who are, you know, have gone through like every possible level of education to be an expert in something, but yet they still need teachers, right? They still need the community to teach them. And we're just like, oh, you know, well, whatever, you can write on your CV that you reviewed for that journal.
Yeah, I mean, you should definitely. I don't really understand why there's not more of a support for that in, you know, just your average tenure committee's, you know, package, what they need to see. In large part because sometimes you're reviewing their papers too. So, you know, you would think
our fields are not that big.
Yeah, no, and that's the other thing with so much specialization and 20, you know, 30,000 types of journal out there. Again, because the fields aren't that big, you're frequently getting reviewed by people that you have some sort of relationship to, even when it's double blind, because.
Well, and here's the other thing that sucks is if you collaborate a lot, which I do, it's really hard to find people to review your papers who there isn't a conflict of interest with, who also have enough expertise in that area. Yeah. So there's a lot of challenges there. And I don't know, like I have to say that for me, since I've kind of become a little bit more cynical about like the economics of all of this, like that's affected my like emotional investment in being a reviewer. I mean, I do it, and like I kind of have a policy that I sign all of my reviews just because I feel like I'm going to give a better review, and, you know, that's like constructive and has a good tone and all of that if I put my name on it. So that's just like what I do. But it seems like at least for me, the fact that like the economics of it, I don't think is really that fair to a lot of people. You know, I just feel more cynical about even my participation in the whole thing.
I'm going to bring in now this, I think that this is the question, right? Like, how do we fight the zombification? So we're talking about all the ways that it zombifies us, and like academic publishing zombifies you, and like you get tired, right? Like, I don't know, Jeremy, I'm sure you get tired too, right? Like as editor, but like, how do we fight zombification in academic publishing? I feel like we started a little bit. I think maybe the thing I'd say most is like what I think we're missing in the humanities is mentorship, right? And like solidarity. And if we have that, right, then I think that we could teach each other about academic publishing in our fields. But I don't know if y'all have a advice or like a response to this.
Yeah, well, so I mean, I've already mentioned it a bunch. Open access is, I think, where this is all going. But how do you deal with the fact that you've got just too much material out there, and how do you know, without the gatekeepers, how do you decide what's good? And you know, Athena's sort of rubric there would, I think, provide at least a value in terms of review, but in terms of finding what you need and finding the best science, you know, there's I guess part of, I think, what should be done is that there could be software, you know, that handles this and helps with this, you know, you could have, artificial intelligences that are just looking at the methods section of, bio papers, and to be honest with you, the plagiarizing, they should all be run through plagiarism. I can't say it. Checks for plagiarism, but they're not always, and not every organization is doing that. Particularly smaller journals that don't want to pay the overhead of sometimes thousands of dollars for a subscription to something like that will do that. So much of that could be checked, and the code is already out there for it to be done. But then again, there's these gateways, right? So that organization that's going to do this has to sign a contract with Elsevier so they can get on there and see all the articles rather than just what's being published out there. Which brings us to, a couple of years ago, you remember when University of California at Berkeley said, no, we're not doing this anymore.
Right,
and they literally said, you can take your big deal publications. We can live without them.
Is that the answer? Is that how you fight zombification? Like you put up your own barrier? I don't know.
Well, they're not the only one too, and I believe I have to verify this, but I believe the nation of Germany has also put that out there as well.
Wow.
That and the NIH has an open access mandate. It's a little bit different, and then you get stuff like PNAS, which opens it after 6 months, so you still, there's still a premium there, but you will get it eventually. And these organizations are really growing and being strengthened. And again, that strength is coming from what's going on right here, by the pressure being put on it by academics and
I want to bring us back to that because, when I think about, where does the pressure come from to, have all of these papers published, right? It's the tenure committees that we have at universities that say you can get tenure or, get promotion through having lots of papers in journals that everybody agrees are good journals. And that then sort of creates this system where you have to, be publishing a lot and in certain journals in order to, number one, feel like you're doing what you should be doing for your job, even if your job as a professor is actually to expand knowledge and teach it to others and all of that. Like the way that that's measured, if that's these journal articles, and it skews everything about like how people even see what the goal is of their jobs as professors.
Well, so we haven't even talked about impact factor or H index yet, or any of these and Liz, I'm actually not sure how. I'd love to know how that affects your work. I'm sure it does, but I've seen dozens of articles on either the injustice, but in the end, a lot of them come down and say, this is a system that does confer some value in what we do, and I know that's a very general way to put it, but how do you know what a good journal is? Well, if it's got a good impact factor, chances are it's a good journal. Now, I can tell you, since I'm on the outside of that system, getting my journals in to Web of Science or Scopus or any of the other indexing indexes that exist out there, it's very difficult. And again, it's we don't have to, because we're run by a private company. But there are lots of journals out there run by, scientists that won't have the resources to survive without impact factor. No one's going to want to publish with them. And there again, even that's changing. You can just use Google Scholar to get a really great. I wouldn't say great. It doesn't pick up nearly enough, but to get a sense of who's reading your articles and what sort of reception they're getting in terms of citations.
Jeremy, we're reaching the end of our show. Any last thoughts about the way out of this zombie apocalypse in academic publishing?
Please.
I
Let's hear.
I wanted to show that that little picture I sent from the Annals of Mathematics. So this is from the 1924 title page of the journal, and you can see here that it's got the names of its editors there. You can see Einstein and Hilbert and Felix Klein, and that's not the von Neumann of huge fame, but that is also a very famous Newman. But you can see the names there, but also you can see their addresses. And basically what that line right above it is saying is that, to submit your article to the journal, you have to send your manuscript to this guy's house, which kind of gets back to what we've been talking to about this entire time, is that the onus is on you as the academic. It's coming to you. It's your time. And I guess if there's a way out, the way out is in the fact that, and I said this earlier, it's the communication that you're doing, and, having podcasts and having all sorts of different routes to your audience. It's all part of that. And I think you will see some movement. In fact, there's already been some movement, and it goes different, it goes in the other direction too. Most physics and mathematicians and basically anyone in the areas of STEM that I spend more of my time in, they're publishing on Archive, which is completely free and completely unpeer reviewed. How do you get on Archive? Well, some guy vouches for you, essentially, and you get on there, and then you can publish what you want. But the editors of those journals are reading Archive because it's supposedly unpublished work. So yeah, exactly, Carla. BioArchive as well, and BioArchive has issues, I'm told. But for the physicists, they're definitely checking Archive every day to see what's coming out. And then there are these things called Archive overlay journals, which is basically, it's people taking that unpeer reviewed work and peer reviewing it and just putting it on a website.
Nice.
And again,
all new models, right? For how we might go forward. And I love that. And I love just that sort of creativity too, and thinking about, originally, academics were sending papers to each other through the mail, and eventually, right, that became what we know as publishing, right? Somebody was like, oh, well, I can print these and send them to everybody who's interested. But then that whole process kind of took on a life of its own now. And in a way, what's happening with these servers and this like overlay stuff is like kind of taking it back and saying, well, with technology that we have now, there are a lot of things that academics can do, without having these intermediaries to share.
Well, and I was just going to highlight, to keep fighting on this, and support an open access initiative. If there's not one already in the university, or I'm sure there probably is, find it and meet with them. I know you don't have time to do any more meetings, but it, as we just found in our last election, advocacy matters, and being out there and talking about this makes a big difference.
Well, Jeremy, thank you so much for
being that. Yeah, keep fighting
with us today. Exactly.
Keep writing also. So
keep writing.
Well, thank you. It was great to be on your podcast.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Thanks so much. And thank you all for joining us for this Monday morning edition of Undead Live. And remember, the best way to protect your brains in the zombie apocalypse is to generously share them.
It's crazy, but it seems so logical. I can't deny that there is something supernatural with you.